Dear students, this is me, Dr. Shikha Sharma, lecturer in English at Government Girls College, B.A. Students, in this video, I am going to give you the summary of the poem, William Shakespeare's poem "To Be or Not to Be." I have in my previous videos I have explained the whole poem. Now, in this video, I am going to give you the summary of this poem. William Shakespeare's poem "To Be or Not to Be" is a soliloquy. What is soliloquy? It is an act of talking to oneself. It is an interesting piece of self-revelation and self-criticism. Hamlet is badly shaken by the immorality in Denmark. He wanted to remove this, but he could not succeed. Thus, he faces a moral dilemma. He seeks a solution of the problem that is suicide. He is in a confusing state. He can't decide what to do. He has three options to get rid of this problem. Okay? First, to tolerate the pain and suffering and the misfortunes of life, or to take up arms against the immense difficulties of life, or to end these problems or obstacles by committing suicide. Further, he says that death is nothing more than a sleep. Death is an eternal sleep. Man gets pleasure in sleep and forgets stress and pain of life. And by accepting death, what is death? Death is an eternal sleep. And by accepting death, we become assured that we can solve the problems and can escape from the worldly sufferings. But these troubles are common for mankind, and a man has to accept these problems whether he wishes or not, whether he wants or not. Further, he says that if men were free to end his life, he would not have been he would not have bear all these problems. Okay, if a man were to free to end his life, he would not have bear this problem, all these problems. Life on this earth has nothing pleasant to offer, so man is born to bear the blows of fortune and the misfortune, and the tyranny of pain, the insult and the pain of failure in love, despondency, delay in verdict, etc. Man can end all these problems by a mere stroke of a bodkin, okay, or a dagger. Man can end himself, okay, by committing suicide, or these by a mere stroke of a bodkin means by ending his life by a self destruction. But man does not go for this, because when he considers that life after death is uncertain, okay, the uncertainty of life after death does not allow him to do so. Just like the same condition is with Prince Hamlet. He wants to commit suicide just to get rid of these problems, but he can't do so. Yeah, these problems stop him, okay, compel him to committing suicide. So the fear about the unknown future after death compel him to give up the idea of committing suicide. And this fear that death may prove worse than life compel him to give up the idea of committing suicide. Then Hamlet concludes his argument. Against suicide. Finally, he gives up the idea of committing suicide when he thinks about the problems and the uncertainty of future after death. Then he thinks that life after death might be worse than present life. So he gives up the idea, and then he concludes, and then he comes to the conclusion that it is the consideration of something after death. Okay, recurrence of the evil in that life takes away the keenness of his purpose of suicide. It is the consideration of something after death, the recurrence of the evil in that life. Recurrence means repetition, coming back दोबारा आ सकती है. Okay, the problem say recurrence of the evil in that life takes away the keenness of his purpose of suicide. Hamlet now widens the scope of his observation and says, and talks about the impact or the influence of this dreadful thought, and he says that the influence of this dreadful thought makes many significant deeds impossible. Over reflection on a deed often weakens the resolution or the determination of a man. Thus, many important deeds remain in the sphere of thoughts and never translated into action by over speculation. Okay, Hamlet's fear of words life and this realization stand in his way, and his problem to be or not to be remains unsolved forever. So he can't decide what to do. He becomes if previously he was in a dilemma what to do. Should he should leave or he should try, and once again after this speculation he comes to the conclusion. He concludes that finally he does not go for committing suicide, and he remains stable with the thought with the idea of with the idea of living his life. He does not go for committing suicide, and he remains stable, and he stands and he remains stable for his decision of living his life, because he knows that life after death might be more worse than the present life. Okay, so he concludes that he should not go for suicide, and he should and the problem and his problem to be or not to be, whether he should live or to die, remains unsolved. He remains in dilemma. Okay, now come to the literary devices in this poem. First of all, we just see alliteration. Okay, what is the alliteration? Alliteration is the repetition of the same consonantal word. In this line, you just see in this line arms against. Okay, arms against, इसमें क्या repeat हो रहा है? A is being repeated in the first line. Arms against. A. Okay, and then another line with who would wear the whips and scones of line. W. W is the repetition of the word W can be seen here. W. Okay, then with the bare bodkin, who would? B. Bare bodkin, repetition. Okay, then he himself might his. He himself, H is being repeated here. Another then we can see a metaphor